My family ignored me my whole life and worshipped my sister, but when I inherited $500,000 and my parents demanded I give it all to her, I confronted them and discovered they'd tried to manipulate my grandfather before he died. I'm 28 years old. I work in finance in Boston, and 3 months ago my grandfather Charles died, which basically unleashed a family war that had been building my entire life. And when I say my entire life, I mean it literally, because this started from as far back as I can remember, from when my younger sister Olivia came into the world and I suddenly stopped existing for my parents. I guess I should start from the beginning, right? I have vague memories of when I was little, before Olivia was born, and I think my parents were normal with me, like, they paid attention to me and stuff. But everything changed when she showed up. I was about 3 when she was born, and suddenly it was like I was invisible. And look, I understand that babies need attention, obviously, but this was different. This never stopped. The first memory I have that's really clear about something being wrong was on my 7th birthday. My parents bought me a cake from the supermarket, you know, one of those basic ones with tube frosting. And they sang happy birthday real quick because Olivia, who was 4, was crying because she wanted attention. I remember sitting there with my half-melted cake thinking, well, I guess that's how birthdays are. But then Olivia's birthday came that same year, and my parents, Thomas and Patricia, my dad and my mom, threw this massive party with clowns, a bouncy castle, decorations everywhere, a custom 2-tier cake, like it was a children's wedding or something. I was 7 years old, but I already knew something didn't add up. You know what I mean? And that's how it always was. When I was about 10, I became obsessed with bicycles. All my friends had cool bikes, and I had one handed down from a cousin that was rusty and made weird noises. So I did what you're supposed to do, right? I saved my birthday money, Christmas money. I did odd jobs around the neighborhood, mowing lawns, washing cars, all those things kids do. It took me like 8 months, but I saved enough money to buy a decent bike. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and I had earned it with my effort. I was super proud, honestly. 2 weeks later, literally 2 weeks, Olivia saw my bike and threw a massive tantrum because she wanted a new one too. And you know what happened? My parents bought her a bike the next day, and not just any bike. No, they bought her a better one than mine, with more gears, more colors, more everything. When I protested, my mom said, "Riley, you already have your bike. Don't be selfish with your sister." I was 10 years old, and I already understood that the word selfish in that house meant anything I wanted or needed. Let's fast forward a bit, because I literally have hundreds of examples of this, and I could be here all day. When I was about 13, I got the lead role in the school play. I had auditioned and practiced for weeks. I was super excited. The night of the premiere, 2 hours before the show started, Olivia, who was 10 at the time, suddenly had a stomachache. My parents decided to stay home with her instead of coming to see me. I remember being on stage, looking out into the audience during the final bow, searching for their faces, and nothing. When I got home that night, Olivia was perfectly fine watching TV and eating popcorn. I asked my mom what happened with her stomachache, and she just said, "It passed. These things happen, Riley. Don't be dramatic." But the worst moment, the one that really marked me, was when I was 16. I had gotten into a summer program at Harvard. It was like this super competitive academic camp for students interested in finance and economics. It was an incredible opportunity. The acceptance letter arrived, and I was over the moon. The program started on a Monday morning, and I needed to get to the airport on Sunday afternoon to catch my flight. Simple, right? Turns out Sunday afternoon Olivia had a dance recital. It wasn't even an important recital. It was like a regular performance from her dance academy, one of those they have every 3 months. I asked my parents to take me to the airport after the recital. There was enough time. My flight left at 7 at night, and the recital ended at 4. My dad looked at me and said, "Riley, your sister's recital is important to her. We're not going to rush because of your program." I said, "But Dad, this is Harvard. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I can take an Uber if necessary, but I don't have enough money saved." And he just said, "You should have thought about that before." In the end, I had to ask a friend's mom to take me to the airport. I arrived running, almost missed my flight, but I made it. My parents went to Olivia's recital. Then they went out to dinner, just the three of them, to their favorite restaurant, and posted like 20 photos on Facebook. I was on the plane, crying quietly in my window seat, trying not to let anyone see me. That was the moment when something broke inside me, I think. It was when I really accepted that for my parents, I was always going to be second rate. When I applied to college, I got accepted to several good schools and even got a partial scholarship. I told my family at dinner and my mom said, "Oh, that's nice, Riley. Pass me the salt." Literally. That was it. Olivia didn't go to college. She decided to stay home and my parents celebrated it like it was the most mature and wise decision in the world. My mom told me, "Not all of us need college degrees to be successful, Riley. Your sister knows what's important in life, which is family." I mean, can you believe it? I went to college and basically cut myself off from them emotionally. I'd call them once in a while, go home for Christmas. I did the bare minimum. I graduated with honors, got a job at a finance firm, worked like crazy, moved up fast, and last year, at 27, I bought my own house. A small house, but it's mine. I paid for it. Nobody gave me anything. My parents came over once, stayed for like 20 minutes. My dad made a comment about how houses in his day were cheaper and they left. Olivia, who was 24 at the time, still lived in my parents' basement without working, and they continued financing everything. So we get to 3 months ago. My grandfather Charles, my dad's dad, passed away. He was 81 and had lived a full life, I guess. He was always kind to me. He was one of the few in the family who asked me how work was going, who remembered my birthday, that kind of thing. My grandmother, Helen, his wife, was always great to me too, but my grandfather had this way of making you feel seen, you know? Like he really cared about what you were doing. The funeral was hard, honestly, harder than I expected. The whole family was there, and my parents were with Olivia the entire time, comforting her, hugging her, even though she had barely visited Grandpa in recent years while I went to see him regularly. But whatever. I was already used to that dynamic. It didn't even affect me anymore. Or so I thought. A week after the funeral, there was the reading of the will. All the grandchildren were there. My cousins, Olivia, and me. The lawyer started reading, and basically Grandfather Charles had left his house to my grandmother, Helen, as was obvious, and then came the part about savings and investments. The guy read, "And to each of my grandchildren, I leave $500,000 to be distributed equally. $500,000 each." There were 4 grandchildren total, so we're talking about 2 million divided equally. I had no idea that Grandpa had that much money saved. He was always modest, lived in a normal house, drove an old car, like he never bragged about anything. I felt like the air left the room. My hands started shaking and I had this weird feeling in my chest, like joy mixed with disbelief. $500,000 meant I could completely pay off my student loans, invest for the future, maybe even take a vacation for the first time in years. I looked at Olivia and she was in shock too, but like over the moon, you know, with that Christmas morning face. My parents looked weird, like uncomfortable, which seemed strange to me at the time, but we'll get to that. We left the lawyer's office, and my parents immediately asked Olivia and me to go with them to a nearby cafe. I thought maybe they wanted to talk about memories of Grandpa or something, but no. As soon as we sat down, before the drinks even arrived, my dad leaned toward me and said, "Riley, we need to talk about the inheritance." I said, "Yeah, it's incredible that Grandpa was so generous with all of us." And my dad said, "Exactly. That's why we think it would be fair for you to give your share to Olivia." Just like that, no anesthesia, like he was asking me to pass him the napkin. I sat there trying to process what I had just heard. I said, "Sorry? What?" And my mom stepped in with that voice she always used. That voice of, "I'm asking you something reasonable, and if you don't do it, you're a monster," and said, "Riley, your sister really needs that money. You have a good job and a house. You're doing well financially." I started feeling that thing I feel when I'm really angry, like everything goes slow and I can hear my heart beating in my ears. I told them, "Grandpa left $500,000 for each of us. It was his decision. He wanted it to be fair. My dad interrupted me and said, "Your grandfather didn't know the complete situation. He didn't know that Olivia needs help to start her life. And besides, I'm the executor of the will. I can make adjustments that I think he would have wanted." And my mom started with her usual speech. "Riley, you've always been so selfish, since you were a child, always thinking only about yourself. Your sister needs you and you're going to turn your back on her. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." Olivia was quiet, looking at her phone, like not even participating in the conversation about her own future. I got up from the table and said, "I'm not continuing this conversation. Grandpa left that money for me, and that's what I'm going to receive." My dad turned red, like when he was about to explode, and said, "We'll see how sure you are about that. I'm the executor, and I have certain power over these decisions." I left the cafe feeling like I had just gotten out of a fight, shaking, nauseous, all that shit. The next few days were horrible. My parents called me constantly, text messages, emails, everything telling me I was destroying the family, that I was a terrible son, that Grandpa would be disappointed in me, which was particularly cruel because I had been the one who spent time with him. My mom even sent me a message saying, "I can't believe you prefer money over your sister. What kind of person are you?" 2 weeks later, I received a letter from the lawyer handling the will. My dad, as executor, had filed documents requesting that my portion of the inheritance be redirected to Olivia, arguing that it was what my grandfather really would have wanted and that I had sufficient financial capacity, while Olivia didn't. I felt like I had been kicked in the stomach. I couldn't breathe properly. I called the lawyer immediately, and he explained that technically my dad had certain power as executor, but that there were also other executors, and that we could dispute this. This is where my grandmother Helen became my hero. She was one of the executors too, and when she found out what my dad was trying to do, she called her own lawyer and the other executors. Turns out Grandpa's will had an anti-contestation clause. Basically, it said that if anyone tried to dispute the will or modify it, they lost their right to be executor and potentially their own inheritance too. My grandmother organized a meeting with all the executors and the main lawyer. I was there by phone. She basically told them all that my dad had a clear conflict of interest, that he was trying to favor his own daughter over his son against my grandfather's explicit wishes, and that this was exactly the kind of behavior the anti-contestation clause was designed to prevent. One of the other executors, a lifelong friend of my grandfather's, completely agreed. The lawyer reviewed everything, talked to my grandmother alone. She never told me what they said, but I can imagine, and in the end determined that my dad would be removed as executor for conflict of interest. The inheritance would be distributed exactly as my grandfather Charles had written it, $500,000 for each grandchild, no exceptions, no changes. When the decision was final, my dad left me a voicemail that I still have saved, though I don't know why. He basically yelled at me that I had manipulated my grandmother, that I had destroyed the family, that Olivia would suffer because of me, and that he would never forgive me. My mom sent me an email that was like 3 pages long, explaining in detail all the ways I had been a bad son since I was born, how I had always been difficult and problematic, how my achievements meant nothing if I didn't have the heart to help my family. The thing is that legally everything was resolved. I would receive my inheritance. But emotionally, this was a nuclear bomb. There was a family gathering about a month later, at some aunt and uncle's house for someone's birthday. I don't remember whose. I didn't want to go, but my grandmother convinced me. She said I couldn't let my parents push me away from the entire extended family. I arrived at the house and it was so awkward, like people were talking in low voices when they saw me. Some uncles greeted me but looked weird, like they didn't know what to say. My parents were in the kitchen with Olivia, and when they saw me, they went into complete ignore mode. After like an hour, my dad decided to make a toast, supposedly, for the birthday person, but in the middle of the speech he started talking about the importance of family and putting your loved ones before money, looking directly at me when he said it. I couldn't stay quiet. I told him, "Dad, if you want to talk about my decision to accept the inheritance that Grandpa left me, we can do it in private, not here." And he exploded, started yelling that I was selfish, that I had abandoned my sister, that Grandpa would be ashamed. Other relatives tried to calm him down, but he was out of control. My uncle, my dad's brother, finally told him to calm down or leave, that this was inappropriate. My parents left with Olivia, making a dramatic scene on the way out. I stayed at the party, but I was destroyed. My grandmother sat with me outside on the patio and told me something I didn't know. Turns out a few years before he died, my grandfather had mentioned to her that my parents had visited him and had suggested that he leave all his money to Olivia because she needed it more. My grandfather had gotten very upset, told my grandmother that he believed in fairness, that all his grandchildren had been good to him in different ways, and that he wasn't going to favor one over another, no matter what his children thought. That hurt me in a new way, you know? Like, not only were they being unfair to me now, they had been planning this. They had tried to manipulate my grandfather before he died. My grandmother hugged me and said, "Your grandfather loved you very much, Riley. He saw how hard you worked and how much your parents ignored you. That's why he wanted to make sure you received what was yours." A few weeks later, I decided to talk to Olivia directly. I sent her a message asking her to meet me for coffee, just the two of us. She agreed, which surprised me. We met at a Starbucks near her house, and when I saw her, she looked different, like more tired, smaller somehow. I didn't start with accusations or anything. I just asked her, "Why didn't you ever say anything? Why did you let Mom and Dad try to take away my inheritance?" Olivia was quiet for a while, stirring her coffee with the straw, and then she said something I didn't expect. She said, "Because it's always been like this, Riley, and I don't know how to do anything different." She explained that she also knew about the favoritism, that she wasn't blind, but that she had never known how to stop it or if she even should stop it. She told me, "I grew up thinking it was normal to receive more attention, more things, more support, and now I'm 25, and I don't know how to do anything. I don't have skills. I don't have direction, and Mom and Dad tell me it's okay, that they'll take care of me always." I asked her if she really wanted to live like that forever, in our parents' basement, depending on them for everything. Her eyes filled with tears, and she told me, "No, but I don't know how to get out. Every time I mention doing something different, they convince me I'm not ready, that the world is dangerous, that I'm better off with them." And there I saw it, clear as day. She was also a victim of this, just in a different way. I had been emotionally abandoned, but had been forced to be independent. She had been overprotected to the point of being paralyzed. I told her, "Olivia, you have $500,000 now. You can go to college, you can get your own apartment, you can learn whatever you want, you can start your life." And she looked at me with this face of hope mixed with fear and said, "Do you think I can?" I told her yes, absolutely, but she had to make the decision. Nobody else could do it for her. It didn't happen overnight, but Olivia started to change. First, she researched universities. Then she enrolled in a community college to take some basic classes. My parents were furious. My dad called me to tell me I had filled Olivia's head with dangerous ideas, that I was pushing her away from the family. My mom said I was jealous of the close relationship they had with Olivia and that I was trying to ruin it. But Olivia kept going. She used part of her inheritance to pay for classes and rent a small apartment. Our parents tried to stop her until the last moment. My dad even threatened to sell the family home to teach her a lesson about consequences, which made no sense, but that was him. Olivia moved out anyway. Now, like 6 months after all this, Olivia and I see each other every 2 weeks for lunch or dinner. We're still rebuilding our relationship. There are years of distance and resentment to heal, but we're trying. She's taking accounting classes and says she likes them, she's making friends, she's living like a real adult for the first time. She told me recently, "Thank you for not giving in, Riley. I think if you had given them your money, I never would have found the courage to use mine." And my parents? My dad still doesn't talk to me. Every now and then he sends me a text message blaming me for something new. The last time was because Olivia didn't come home for Thanksgiving, as if that was my fault. My mom started going to therapy about 2 months ago. Something about how she finally realized she had contributed to an unhealthy dynamic. Her words, not mine. She called me once to apologize, but it was one of those weird apologies where they also keep justifying themselves, you know? Like, "I'm sorry you felt ignored, but we also had to give Olivia more attention because she was more sensitive, and you were always more independent. I don't know what to do with that, honestly. Regarding the money, I paid off all my student loans, something I never thought I could do before I was 40. I invested a big chunk, donated some to mental health organizations, because the therapy I've been doing since all this drama has helped me so much. I also started a small scholarship fund in my grandfather's name for finance students who come from complicated families. I thought he would have liked that. My grandmother, Helen, and I are closer than ever. She told me once, "Your grandfather and I saw what was happening with your parents. We tried to compensate when we could, but we didn't want to overstep boundaries. Now I wish I had done more." I told her that what she did to protect my inheritance was more than anyone else had done for me in years. You know what's the weirdest thing about all this? For years I felt like something was wrong with me, like I was the problem, the difficult son, the selfish one, the one who didn't understand how important family was. But it turns out I wasn't crazy. The favoritism was real, the mistreatment was real, and I didn't have to accept it just because it came from my parents. My grandfather's will was like his way of telling me, "I see you. You matter. You deserve the same as everyone else." And fighting for that inheritance wasn't really about the money. It was about fighting for the right to be treated like a human being with the same value as my sister. Any regrets? Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled the conversations with my parents differently. If I had been more diplomatic, maybe things wouldn't have gotten so ugly. But then I remember that I spent 28 years trying to be enough for them. 28 years trying to earn their approval, their attention, their love, and it was never enough. This time, I stood up for what was mine, what my grandfather wanted to be mine, and even though it hurt and still hurts, it was the right thing. Last week, Olivia sent me a photo of her first accounting exam with a big A marked in red on top. The message said, "Look what I did," and I responded, "You always knew how to do it. You just needed the chance." And that's enough for now, I guess.